Chosen one, the world did not announce your awakening with thunder or applause. It began silently, invisibly, like a tremor beneath ancient soil. A shift not even you noticed at first, but she did, long before your words reached her, before your eyes found hers, before your path and hers ever collided. There was something about you that moved the unseen. You were no longer the man lost in noise. You were becoming the man whose very presence changes the frequency of a room. That shift was real. It came not from charm or effort or social proof. It was the consequence of a soul finally rooted, a fire finally tamed, and a presence finally remembered by its source. You had stepped beyond performance and into power. And from that moment forward, women didn't just see you, they felt you. You did not force this awakening. It arrived when you stopped trying to be impressive and began to live in integrity. When you stopped chasing attention and started tending to your essence. When you stopped asking, "How do I attract her?" and started asking, "How do I become the kind of man I respect when no one is watching?" That inner question changed your trajectory. And even though the world kept spinning, even though others went on as if nothing had shifted, you had. And women, especially the sensitive ones, felt it like a ripple across the surface of still water. You became less reactive, less predictable, less performative. You were no longer trying to fit in. You were no longer trying to win approval. You walked with something ancient inside you, something earned, not granted. Your movements slowed, your words carried more weight. You stopped fidgeting to prove value. You embodied value, and in doing so, you became a gravitational center in every space you entered. Not flashy, not loud, but undeniable. Like the steady pull of the moon on ocean tides. When she first encountered you, it wasn't a romantic impulse. It was curiosity, the kind that makes the air around someone feel different, the kind that makes her question why her heartbeat just softened, why her thoughts just quieted, why her mask just cracked, just slightly. She felt safe, not because of what you said, but because of who you were not. You were not grasping, not peacocking, not chasing. Your stillness made room for her to simply exist. And that was rare. Rare enough to disrupt her patterns. Rare enough to make her wonder why she couldn't stop thinking about a man who hadn't even touched her. The shift wasn't physical, it was spiritual. You had crossed into something deeper. You no longer needed her to complete you. You no longer needed her to validate your masculinity. You weren't trying to seduce her. You were busy embodying your truth. And that embodiment released a signal, not a message crafted by intellect or technique, a frequency, low, steady, pure. It said, "This is a man who knows who he is. This is a man who does not need to be chosen in order to feel chosen." That signal didn't announce itself with noise. It hummed in the background of your actions, in your silence, in the way you listened without analyzing, in the way you walked away without resentment, in the way you stayed without grasping. She felt it, and it reached somewhere far beneath her image of attraction. It brushed against her spirit, and she didn't know why, but she remembered you, not from this life perhaps, but from the realm where souls recognize alignment. You didn't win her by performance. You disarmed her by being, and being, chosen one, is now your power. The new you does not extend your hand in desperation. You no longer ask to be loved. You no longer ache for approval. Chosen one, something within you has become sovereign, and that sovereignty invites, but never pleads. Your energy has become the kind that doesn't chase, it opens. Not like a door swinging wide in need, but like a temple revealed to those ready to enter with reverence. She feels it the moment she steps near you. You're no longer projecting. You're no longer adjusting yourself to match what she might want. You are still, grounded, devoted, not to her but to your own alignment. That alignment has made you magnetic in the deepest sense, not the shallow magnetism of seduction, but the kind that awakens a woman's soul to something she thought didn't exist anymore. In your company, she isn't pressured to smile. She doesn't feel the need to impress. Her walls begin to soften not because you chip away at them, but because you don't lean on them. Your very presence whispers, "Be." You're safe. You invite her, not with words, but with the absence of need. That absence is rare. Most men try to take something in the name of affection. Most men seek touch as transaction. Most men press with eyes that scan for weakness. But you do not press. You do not scan. You witness. You let her feel you witnessing her without agenda. and that undoes her defenses far more than any poem, gift, or compliment. You are the man who no longer performs closeness to receive intimacy. You simply allow space, and from that space she feels drawn, slowly, steadily. She begins to reach for you not because you've lured her, but because you've freed her. She feels drawn not to your posture or your words or your smile, but to your restraint, to your stillness, to the knowing in your silence that says, I do not need to be filled, I am the fullness. You are no longer a man who desires to be liked. You are a man aligned with his mission, with his God, with his own sacred fire. And that fire doesn't burn erratically anymore. It glows, it warms, it doesn't demand her body, it honors her energy, it doesn't beg for affection, it makes affection feel earned, not through effort, but through trust. This is why you are becoming transcendent in the eyes of women. You are no longer the man they see as a moment. You are becoming the man they remember after the noise is gone. Because you did not push, you did not play, you did not parade. You simply stood in your center, in your sacred masculine alignment, and invited her to meet you there if she was ready. And in that invitation, you spoke a language so few ever learn, the language of true embodied presence. The kind that does not seek to consume, but to contain. The kind that doesn't erupt, but endures. The kind that doesn't ask, do you love me, but says, I am love already. If you are ready, come see. That is who you are now, chosen one. And that is why the world will never experience you the same way again. There came a sacred moment, chosen one, when the old scripts crumbled in your hands. Not because you mastered them, but because you outgrew them. The game of attraction, the dance of tactics, the pursuit of approval, the subtle manipulations passed down by wounded mentors suddenly felt beneath you. You saw the loop. You saw the emptiness it left behind. The praise you chased never filled the silence afterward. The wins always cost your peace. And so you stopped. You laid it down. You walked away not because you couldn't win anymore, but because you realized that the win itself was hollow. You understood that proving your desirability was a distraction from becoming a man who no longer needs to be proven. The world noticed the shift, but only those with eyes to see understood what had changed. You didn't become less powerful. You became more sovereign. Your attention no longer leaked toward every beautiful distraction. Your heart no longer bent toward validation. You became still. Your gaze stopped scanning. Your hands stopped reaching. And in that stillness, you stopped playing the game. And in doing so, you transcended it. You no longer tried to win women. You became a man they longed to be won by, not through chase, not through seduction, but through presence. Your presence became rare, not because it was loud, but because it was full. Women began to sense it. They couldn't explain why they were drawn to you. You weren't the loudest, you weren't the most charming, you weren't the man rehearsing lines. But you felt like truth. You felt like something they could trust even before they could articulate it. Your energy no longer vibrated with the tension of need. It resonated with the calm rhythm of a man who has returned home to himself. That calm is rare. That calm is what they crave but rarely name. That calm is what made you different. Because in the game, most men are reactive. Most men are caught in performance. Most men speak to be liked, touch to be wanted, give to be chosen. You became the opposite. You spoke less but said more. You gave nothing you did not mean. You no longer begged with effort, you revealed with essence. And in that essence, you offered a sacred alternative to the game, authenticity. But not soft, passive authenticity. Not the kind that seeks approval for being real. No, you embodied the kind of authenticity that threatens illusions, that disarms masks, that makes women pause and ask themselves, am I truly ready to stand beside this? Because you no longer needed her. And that's what made you so unforgettable. You didn't radiate lack, you radiated selection. She wasn't a solution, she was an invitation. And in that invitation, she sensed something ancient. A man who sees with depth, a man who doesn't barter with charm, a man who has bled, rebuilt, and risen. She felt it in her chest before it ever reached her thoughts. That feeling didn't come from words. It came from the game you stopped playing. Because when you left that game, you entered something sacred. Devotion to truth. And truth, chosen one, is what makes you magnetic now. Not strategy, not image, not edge. You transcended the game. And in doing so, you became the standard. There is a moment, chosen one, when a woman sees through the walls you do not build. Not because she's trying to decode you, but because there's nothing false to decode. She feels no trickery in your attention, no pressure in your gaze, no veiled demands hiding behind your compliments. You are not showing her a curated mask. You are showing her a grounded man. And it shakes her. Not because she's afraid, but because she isn't used to it. You aren't trying to be perfect. You aren't performing for her affection. You are simply you, and that is rare. You carry your scars like scripture, not shame. You've made peace with your imperfections. You've looked into the mirror when no one was watching and forgave the boy you once were. That work, that inner intimacy, radiates now in your energy. You no longer need her to rescue your worth. You've done that already. So when she stands before you, she doesn't feel your insecurity disguised as bravado. She doesn't feel your desire as desperation. She feels your wholeness. And that wholeness doesn't intimidate her. It invites her. Because it tells her, you can bring all of you. You don't have to be perfect here either. You are real now, not just raw but refined through truth. Your flaws no longer sabotage you. They inform your compassion. Your past no longer cages you. It teaches you how to hold space. You do not hide your softness because your strength is not afraid of it. You do not mask your desires because you've learned to hold them with reverence, not urgency. And that, more than anything, is what draws her to you. Not your money, not your muscles, not your mystique, but your maturity. She doesn't crave perfection. She craves safety. And you, chosen one, have become the kind of man who creates safety not through control, but through clarity. You no longer say, I'll protect you, like it's a promise to dominate. You are protection, not because you shield her from herself, but because you do not add to her confusion. You are the quiet in her chaos, the depth in her doubt, the permission she didn't know she needed to stop pretending. You do not give her a fairy tale. You give her reality. But it's a healed reality, a sacred space where imperfection is not feared, but embraced. That is why she begins to fall for you, not in lust, but in reverence. Because you are not trying to be her savior or her God. You are simply being a man who honors what is real. And that realness feels like water to a woman who's been drowning in illusion. She breathes around you, not because you fill every silence, but because your silence doesn't punish her. Not because you demand her affection, but because your detachment says, I'll still be whole, even if you leave. That is what makes you transcendent now. You've stopped trying to impress her, and in doing so, you've impressed upon her soul. Not with tricks, not with tactics, but with truth. And that truth, chosen one, is the most attractive thing a woman can feel. Chosen one, in a world where passion burns fast and dies faster, you've become the rarest thing, a steady flame. You no longer chase intensity for its highs or novelty for its thrill. You have left behind the restless hunger that once led you from spark to spark, only to be left in ashes. The flame you now carry is not chaotic. It is not the fire of ego, nor the flare of desperation. It is the deep, quiet burn of alignment, and that alignment is what sets you apart from the noise. You are no longer ignited by validation. Your fire is self-fed. It comes from inner devotion, from knowing exactly who you are and no longer needing the world to reflect that back. That's why your presence feels different. Women don't feel engulfed by you. They feel warmed. They don't fear being consumed. They feel invited to rest. And they do. Because your energy is not hot and cold, not full of sharp turns or sudden withdrawals. It's not a spark that flashes bright and vanishes. It's a hearth. A fire that stays lit long after others have gone out. There's a deep trust in that. A woman senses it before she can name it. She knows your consistency isn't born of boredom or lack of options. It's born of choice. You've chosen presence. You've chosen purpose. You've chosen to be the man who doesn't chase fleeting connection, but builds sacred one. You've become more than just someone to flirt with. You've become someone who lingers in the memory long after the moment ends. Not because of what you did, but because of how your presence stayed, even when your body walked away. And that's what separates you now. You've become the man who burns with intention, not impulse. Your desire is no longer volatile. It's pure. It's patient. It doesn't ask for quick returns. It doesn't need fast gratification. Because the man you are now is no longer addicted to outcomes. He is faithful to the process. Your sexual energy no longer drives you like a storm. It guides you like a compass. You don't pour it everywhere hoping something sticks. You channel it. You wield it. You understand it's a force too sacred to spill on the ground just to feel alive for a moment. That's why you are different now. You no longer confuse desire with identity. You no longer burn for approval. You radiate from within. And because your light is constant, not frantic, women trust it. They feel it when you walk into a room. They feel it when you hold eye contact without flinching. They feel it in the way you don't need to speak to be felt. In the way you don't need to prove attraction to be remembered. Your stillness speaks, your fire breathes, and its warmth stays even after the words fade. You've become the man whose presence doesn't burn her, it heals her. Because you are no longer the man who ignites and disappears. You're the man who remains. Chosen one, you have learned the sacred art of restraint. Not repression, not denial, but refined energy. The kind that doesn't demand space, but creates it. You are no longer trying to impress her, nor are you trying to overpower her with charm. You are no longer seeking to overwhelm her with affection or closeness or stimulation. You've become the man who simply stands in his own calm current and invites her to step into that stream when she's ready. No pressure, no urgency, only space. And it's that very space that awakens something in her that she's long forgotten. You don't chase her openness. You honor it. You don't touch to take. You touch to offer. You no longer seduce to satisfy your own hunger. You now offer your presence like an altar, sacred, patient, clean. And because there is no grasping in your energy, there is grace. She begins to feel herself soften without being told. Her breath slows, her body relaxes, her guard begins to lower. And it wasn't because of what you said or did, but because you did not intrude. You have become the man who does not interrupt her unfolding. You don't lead with performance. You lead with stillness. And that stillness is not emptiness. It is the vessel that makes room for truth. She doesn't feel pressured around you. She feels seen, not in the surface level sense, but in the spiritual sense, as if her unspoken parts are not only safe with you, but welcomed. And that welcome has nothing to do with agenda. It has everything to do with the frequency you now carry. A frequency that says, you can stay closed, or you can open. Either way, I am whole. And that wholeness is what makes you transcendent now. Because most men want her heart to open so they can finally feel full. But you already are full, so her openness becomes a gift, not a need. You don't ask her to bloom for your pleasure. You offer such calm light that blooming becomes natural, even involuntary. Her body begins to trust you before her mind understands why. It's because you're no longer projecting your desire onto her like a spotlight. You are holding it within you like a flame, quiet, alive, generous. And this, chosen one, is where your energy becomes rare. It doesn't penetrate without permission. It doesn't overwhelm with urgency. It doesn't speak with expectation. It simply exists like a steady pulse. And that pulse becomes a rhythm she finds herself drawn to, not to escape herself, but to remember herself. You are no longer the man who tries to prove his worth by how much he can make her feel. You are the man who allows her to feel herself more deeply in your presence. That is real intimacy. That is sacred connection. And it only happens when a man has stopped trying to conquer and instead begun to contain. You have become the man who holds space, not just for her body, but for her soul. Not just for her attention, but for her truth. And because of that, she begins to open, not in fear, not in survival, not in obligation, but in wonder. Because around you, opening doesn't feel risky. It feels inevitable. You don't overtake her, chosen one. You invite her. And that invitation, spoken only through your energy, is the reason she will never forget you. Chosen one, you are no longer the man who is ruled by appetite. Your desire once rushed through you like a flood with no banks, powerful but untamed, noble but undirected. And for a time that intensity masqueraded as power. But now you have done something most never will. You've taken that raw fire, that sacred hunger, that deep river of sexual energy within you, and you have trained it, not by suppression, but by devotion. You have not extinguished the fire. You've honored it. You've given it structure. You've built within yourself a cathedral high enough and strong enough to hold that blaze without letting it consume everything around you. Discipline is no longer a burden for you. It has become your liberation. It has freed you from the desperate patterns that once kept you searching, seeking, reaching. The scattered nature of your energy has collapsed into precision. And with that precision, your focus has sharpened, your words have slowed, and your choices have deepened. You no longer follow every impulse. You no longer need every encounter to satisfy your emptiness. Because you are not empty anymore. You are anchored. Women sense this before you even speak. It's in the way your eyes rest gently instead of scan. It's in the way your body carries tension as strength, not stress. It's in the stillness of your presence, not as a pose but as a practiced truth. She knows the difference. She knows what it feels like to be near a man who wants her attention as medicine for his loneliness. And she knows what it feels like to be near a man who desires her but does not need her to confirm who he is. Your discipline, chosen one, is not just about what you refrain from. It's about what you now refuse to betray, yourself. You don't offer your time to chaos anymore. You don't give your intimacy to the undeserving. You've stopped bleeding sacred energy into temporary connections. And because of that, women don't just desire you, they respect you. That respect is the foundation upon which real connection can be built. And it only exists because you've earned it through the repetition of silent decisions, through the quiet moments when no one was watching, through the lonely nights when you chose growth over gratification. This is the mystery of your current energy. It's not just magnetism, it's mastery. You are a man now fully in control of his inner forces, not by domination, but by integration. You have befriended your instincts, you have listened to your longing, and now, instead of them dragging you into hunger, they walk beside you as power. That power no longer makes women nervous, it makes them curious, because it promises no performance, no pressure, just presence. Your gaze no longer says, "I need something from you." It says, "I see all of you, and I can hold it." And it is because of this inner strength, this invisible architecture of restraint, that women want to fall in love with you. Not because you're flashy or loud, but because you are the first man whose energy feels like a place she could actually rest inside. Not because you want to capture her, but because you no longer need to. You choose, and choice, made from inner clarity, is the highest expression of masculine love. You've fallen in love with your discipline, and now they are beginning to fall in love with the man that discipline has revealed. There's something about you now, chosen one, that lingers long after you leave. Something in the way your presence seeps into memory like scent in an old room. She can't explain it. She may try to distract herself, move on, intellectualize it. But the truth is, you've etched yourself into a part of her that words don't touch. You are not just a man she met. You are an experience she walked through, and her body remembers, even if her pride tries to forget. This has nothing to do with charm or tactics. It has everything to do with how real you've become. Most men pass through a woman's life like wind, fast, loud, gone. But you arrived like weather. Something shifted when you came. The air thickened with presence. The silence stretched between your words and wrapped around her soul. You didn't tell her who you were. You showed her through patience, through consistency, through the restraint that made her feel safe without ever making her feel small. You became unforgettable, not because you tried, but because you didn't. There was no chase, no pretending, no performance. You gave her the rarest gift a man can offer: clarity without expectation. That clarity gave her freedom. And freedom is dangerous, because in freedom the truth rises, and the truth is she remembers how she felt near you, not flattered, not conquered, but free. And that feeling cannot be faked, nor can it be replaced. She remembers the steadiness of your eyes, how they never demanded but always held. She remembers how your presence didn't lean forward, it invited. She remembers the way you never tried to fix her, change her, or prove something. She remembers how you didn't flinch when she tested you, how you didn't fold when she pulled back, how you didn't chase her mood but honored your own. And because of that, her soul began to trust you in a way her mind didn't understand. Even if she walks away, even if she tells herself she needs something easier, even if the noise of the world tells her to find someone more available or less intense, you stay. Not physically, spiritually. You have become the mirror she can't escape, not because you showed her who you are, but because you showed her who she is when she stands beside a man like you. That reflection is what haunts her. Not the loss of your attention, but the loss of who she became in your presence. Because you didn't take anything from her. You gave her back to herself, without demand, without promise, without grasp. You simply stood there, whole, offering presence instead of persuasion. And that, chosen one, is a kind of love most never experience, because most men are too loud to let silence do the work. You've become the kind of man who does not need to be remembered to remain unforgettable. And that is why even if she tries to forget you, she never truly can. Chosen one, there is a rare silence that lives in you now, a silence not of absence, but of depth. A silence so full it makes noise feel hollow. You no longer speak to impress or seduce because you understand something deeper, that the soul listens far more than the ears ever do. And when you are near her, you no longer try to find the right words because the truth is, your energy speaks first. And when it does, it says what no tongue could articulate. She feels it before her mind interprets it. Your stillness speaks louder than rehearsed flattery. Your posture, your eyes, your breath, each carries a message she was never taught how to hear, but has always longed to understand. You aren't speaking to her mind. You're not debating her logic. You're reaching her nervous system. You're speaking to the part of her that has been waiting for a man who doesn't make her feel like she must shrink, shift, or perform in order to be accepted. Around you, her body doesn't feel threatened. It feels recognized. You have become fluent in a language older than culture, older than romance, older than story, the language of truth without performance. When you look at her, she doesn't feel watched. She feels witnessed. When you touch her, she doesn't feel claimed, she feels understood. Your presence doesn't interrupt the flow of her being. It aligns with it. You don't lead with intellect, you lead with intention. That intention rests like a soft drumbeat beneath your silence. It doesn't ask to be seen. It just keeps beating, softly, steadily, without pause. And she hears it, even if she doesn't know what it is. She begins to attune to your rhythm without effort. She begins to match your pace without being told. And in that rhythm, something inside her unlocks. Not lust, not infatuation, but a deeper knowing, a remembrance of something she thought was too much to hope for. You are not her fantasy. You are something more dangerous. You are the man who doesn't need her to validate his strength, yet chooses to make her feel safe anyway. You are the man who could have led with hunger, but instead offers stillness. You are the man who knows exactly how much you want her, but refuses to weaponize that desire into pressure. That restraint becomes poetry. That silence becomes music. That patience becomes language. And it speaks to the part of her soul that knows when a man is lying, even if his words are beautiful. And when she hears you, she knows you are not a verse meant to impress her. You are a melody she can finally breathe to. You don't speak to conquer, chosen one. You speak to connect, and sometimes you don't speak at all. Because what you are now needs no translation. She feels it, and that's enough. Chosen one, there was a time when you were just a figure passing through her story. A conversation, a possibility, a distraction perhaps, but no longer. You have become something she cannot categorize, because you no longer fit into the boxes the world gave her for understanding men. You are not a role, not a strategy, not a phase. You are a visitation, a moment of her life that shifted the axis of what she thought was possible. You have become an experience, not because you tried to be one, not because you wore the mask of mystery or hid behind cryptic words or fashionable detachment, but because you showed up in your fullness, your realness. You entered her world not asking what she could offer, but asking whether you could hold her world with reverence. You didn't make her feel like a destination. You made her feel like a cathedral. And in that sacred reverence, you stopped being just a man. You became a memory that can't be erased, a frequency that she didn't know she was attuned to until you arrived. A feeling that defies retelling. She cannot explain what you were, but she knows how she felt in your presence. Not small, not consumed, not put on a pedestal, but seen, held, understood without being explained. She knows now that love is not about drama or chaos. It's about peace in the presence of passion. And that is what you became. You didn't reduce your desire to make her comfortable. You elevated your discipline to make her safe. And in that safety, she began to dream. Not about weddings, not about labels, but about being more of herself, because next to you, she could be whole without apology. That chosen one is why you remain unforgettable. Not because of the words you said, not because of the way you touched her, not even because of the way she felt about you, but because of the way she felt about herself when she was near you. You didn't build yourself to impress her. You built yourself to become whole. And wholeness, when shared, transforms. You didn't come to take her breath away. You came to remind her she could breathe. And now, whether she stays or leaves, whether she returns or disappears, she will never look at men the same way again. Because you weren't a fantasy.